Hello and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. Post-emergent soybeans, you need some more residual. Let's face it, we've got tough resistant weeds out there and we're shooting for super high yields. We'll talk about which products may help you in your weed control program.
We're also going to talk about how to improve your fertility program by the use of plant tissue analysis.
That's a good thing, Brian, because we need to grow great plants. Crop canopy is the best way to stop our weed of the week, but we'll talk about what herbicides may work too. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Out here, great yield starts with great weed control. That's why I choose the Roundup Ready Extend crop system, the system that makes the difference, because only I know what it takes out here. Yield's what it's all for. But keeping my fields clean all season, that's what it's all about. This is my field.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk just a little bit about corn diseases. If you end up out in a cornfield and you're taking a look at plants and you see, hey, there's something wrong with this leaf or this stalk, there might be a disease. How are you going to figure out what it is? We'd encourage you to download the free Ag PhD Corn Diseases app.
This is where we get called to fields a lot. Farmers will see, hey, something doesn't look right with this plant. And a lot of times they may suspect, I did some foliar fertilizer. I wonder if it burned the leaf or stressed it. Or I sprayed a herbicide out there and maybe it was a hot surfactant with it. And so we get a lot of questions around herbicide or fertilizer application timing. The other thing that we hear a lot is, what about nutrient deficiency? Sometimes they can look a little funky out on those plants. So there are many things that could look similar to a disease. And it's kind of nice when you're out in the field to actually have pictures in hand, because what happens too often is somebody will see me uptown or something like that and say, hey, out in my field, I got something that looks like this. And I don't know, we're not the best at describing those things to each other. And I'm like, well, it could be this, or it could be that, or it could be the other. And it's so much better if you're in your field and have something handy, like right on your smartphone, to take a look at to see if it does kind of look like a disease.
All right, I'm going to make this simple for you. Generally speaking, fertility issues and herbicide issues will be in a pattern in the field. Corn diseases, not so much. A few years ago, Darren and I worked together with the American Phytopathological Society, and we developed this Ag PhD Corn Diseases app just so you would have this information for yourself on your farm to take a look at, because there are a lot of different diseases. It's kind of hard to figure that out. Now, we would certainly encourage you, if you're not sure about if it's a disease or not, send some plants in to a plant pathologist and have them determine, all right, it's this disease or that disease. But if you're looking for good information, including pictures, we'd encourage you to check out this Corn Diseases app.
Now, with all diseases, we'd like to treat with a fungicide perhaps ahead of time, or apply the proper fertility balance out there to avoid the disease. If we can keep that plant healthier all through the season, we lessen the likelihood that we're going to have a disease. But let's face it, if you've already got something that's showing up all over in your field, you just need to figure out what it is, because this year's yield has probably been lost already, whatever you're going to lose to that disease. We want to change it so next year we've got a better plan in place to try to thwart that disease.
Now, that's not to say you couldn't still spray some fungicide and save some of that yield this year. But where Darren's going with this is, fungicides are great at preventing disease, not real great at curing disease. So if you see widespread disease issues all across your field, yes, I agree with Darren 100%. The yield's probably already been lost. It's probably a waste to spend the money on the fungicide. But if you're catching it early, if you're scouting your fields often, then this Diseases app can really help you. You can identify this, and then you can also look at, all right, which hybrids do I have that are susceptible to that disease, and try to figure out where best to invest your dollars.
Well, the big thing for me is that a lot of these diseases, well, they look the same. So take gray leaf spot, for example, and bacterial leaf streak. Gray leaf spot a lot of times is going to follow those leaf veins and use those as borders, and bacterial leaf streak is going to be a little more irregular on the border. that's the best way I can tell the two apart. But when you're out in the field, you do need to take a pretty close look. And if you're getting older, like Brian and I are, you may need to take along your reading glasses, or just use that magnifying glass on your phone and take a picture of that, or zoom in, or whatever you've got to do. But you do want to tell what's different out there so you can manage it properly.
Well, once again, we just encourage you, when you're out scouting your cornfields, to use the Ag PhD Corn Diseases app to help recognize one disease from the next.
Well, unfortunately, a disease is probably not going to take out our weed of the week, but we'll show you the best ways to stop it on your farm coming up later in the show.
If you're looking to expand your farm's grain handling, you want everything to be fast and efficient. The Quick Belt from Norwood Sales is your all-around grain handling solution. Our conveyor-based system uses an 18-inch belt and a 10-inch tube, which minimizes seed damage while moving more than 10,000 bushels an hour. That's fast enough to fill a semi in 6 minutes. Plus, our hood is designed to gently direct the flow of grain straight down, keeping your crop in condition. Keep your grain and your farm moving with the Quick Belt from Norwood Sales.
There are a lot of steps to having a perfect season. Don't let your fertilizer plan be the step that trips you up. No matter when you apply fertilizer, no matter how, AgroLiquid has the experts and the products that'll help you move closer to your target and hit the bullseye. AgroLiquid moves you closer to your target.
Do you feel like there's never enough time to get everything done before planting? The window for spring work is quick and unforgiving. Give yourself the upper hand with the ProTill High Performance High Speed Disc. More and more farmers agree the ProTill is the right tool for Springfield conditions and heavy residue management. Zero maintenance bearings, independent disc technology, oversized pins and bushings allow the ProTill to handle whatever field or conditions you can throw at it. Degelman High Performance Equipment.
Tough, precise, efficient. Strip tillage with the Soil Warrior brings the future to your farm. Learn more at soilwarrior.com/agphd.
Avoid the V-shaped pattern of injury caused by chemical buildup in your booms. The Express End Cap from Hypro eliminates the dead ends that lead to herbicide buildup and provides easy access to your booms, giving a complete flush between applications. Hypro, helping you spray better.
One of the things that you can do on your farm to improve your fertility program is use plant tissue analysis. We're going to talk today about how to use it, when to use it, and what you can learn on your farm.
There are a lot of different things to learn from plant tissue analysis, but the big thing for me is you're getting a snapshot of what's happening right now in those plants. If you only pull one sample all through the year, you're only going to have a snapshot of, well, that 1 week in June that I pulled a sample, I guess it was dry for a few weeks around there, or I guess we had tons of rain right around that time. It doesn't tell you very much. So what we would suggest, and what's worked well for us on our own farm, is to pull samples throughout the season.
With corn, we want to start right at emergence. And we always pull our plant tissue samples on Monday mornings. The reason why we do it, we want to be consistent with the time and consistent with the day. So we have every single week where we're getting this done, number one. And number two, we want to make sure that we are doing it at the same time of day, because what you see in the plant can vary a little bit throughout the day. Not a lot, but a little bit. So Darren made this comment about, well, that week we had this thing. No. With plant tissue analysis, it's literally right now, this minute. That's what's in the plant. That's why we need lots of samples to go along from there. So with corn, we suggest starting right at emergence. The first Monday morning you find a plant up at all, you should be pulling plant tissue samples. Do that for at least 8 weeks, preferably 12 weeks in a row every single Monday. The other reason why I say Mondays is then when you pull the plant tissue samples, you put it in the mail, it doesn't sit there over a weekend in some post office somewhere rotting. We'd like them to get to the lab as quickly as possible. With soybeans, we usually suggest waiting until a week or two before flowering. We don't generally see a lot of difference real early in the season, but if you want to start right after emergence with soybeans, you certainly can. Our suggestion is usually a week or two before flowering, get started then, and go for 8 to 12 weeks.
All right, Brian just gave a lot of details there, and if you don't have a DVR or if you're not recording the show, you may say, whoa, where do you have a quick handy reference for me? You can go right to our website at agphd.com and click on the resources tab, and you'll find a plant tissue analysis guide with a number of different crops. You may not be raising corn or soybeans that we've talked about here, but if you've got a different crop, you still can use plant tissue analysis to find out what's going on nutritionally in that crop. That would be one way to do it. The other thing is in the Ag PhD Insider magazine, if you subscribe to that, we talk about plant tissue analysis on a fairly regular basis and show what's going on, what we're working on with plant tissue analysis and what we're learning as well.
All right, in terms of what we're learning, the number one thing is how much of each individual nutrient is there at every point during the growing season. And the reason why we want to do 8 to 12 weeks is we want to get a general idea of how we did during the course of the season and make adjustments for next year. Now, there are some people who will say, all right, well, if I'm a little low on boron this week, I want to go do some foliar feeding. And you can do that. And that does work in some cases. But if you say, wow, I'm ridiculously low, you're probably not going to catch that plant back up. Just keep in mind with foliar feeding, you can only get a little bit into the plant. So if you've got irrigation, great. You can throw a little bit of fertilizer out there 2-3 times a week, every week for the next 2 months. That's awesome. For us in dry land, we aren't going to do that. I'm not going to go back out there 15 times to go spray a little bit of foliar fertilizer on. I can't make that much money back up. But when I realize, oh, I'm terribly short on potassium or zinc or something like that, I will make adjustments going into next year to get that fixed on a big scale.
It really changed how we looked at fertility on our farm and where we put the priorities. It didn't mean we were going to spend more money. This is one of the things that some farmers I talk to say, well, then you're just going to want me to spend more money on fertilizer. That's not it at all. Maybe your budget is $100 an acre and you say, how best can I spend the $100? It may mean, instead of putting $30 over here on phosphorus, I'm going to shift some of that same money and put it on potassium or put it on zinc or whatever nutrient is short in your crop, and all of a sudden you get more yield and you only spent the same amount of money or possibly even less.
The number one question we get about plant tissue analysis is, what level do I actually need in the plant at each and every growing point? Well, we don't really know that, and no lab does either. What we've found from labs is basically if they say you're sufficient, you're just average from all the samples that have come in. That doesn't necessarily mean you're sufficient for 200 bushel corn or 300 bushel corn or even 100 bushel corn. It's just an average of all the samples that have come in. So what we would encourage you to do is just start building your own database, start looking at your points, talk to other high yield farmers, and really start to try to fine tune this thing. But you can see the glaring differences. On our farm, when we first started doing plant tissue analysis, we were ridiculously high on nitrogen. We were ridiculously low on potassium, boron, and zinc. Okay, I don't have to be that smart a guy to figure out, you know what, if I've got all this data showing me I am crazy low on 3 nutrients, I need to put more dollars there. And if I'm crazy high on 1 nutrient, I should probably pull back on that one just a little bit and start to refine my program.
So your take-home message today is plant tissue analysis is really good. If you can pull a plant tissue test from every one of your fields on a weekly basis, that would be awesome. But most farmers will start with just 1 field, taking a high-yielding area and a low-yielding area, pulling a plant tissue analysis each week during the growing season for at least 10 or 12 weeks. Send those samples in for analysis. If you have questions, once you get those results back, you can email us, radio@agphd.com. We answer those types of questions each week on our radio program. Also, you can bring those results to an Ag PhD winter workshop next winter, and we'd be happy to take a look at them too.
Well, one of the most important things to getting high yields for your farm is controlling our weed of the week. We'll show you how to do it on your farm coming up later in the show.
Your planter is the single most important piece of equipment on your farm, because without a uniform stand, you can't reach maximum yield. That's why Harvest International set out to design a planter that takes advantage of the newest innovations in planter technology. Built tough for high speed and integrated with the latest precision enhancements, Harvest International planters ensure every seed you plant today puts more in your bin at harvest. Harvest International, planting the future.
At Estes Performance Concaves, we know how valuable your time is at harvest. That's why we designed the new XPR concave system. The XPR system is the #1 performance concave system on the market, surpassing the rest in both speed and efficiency, ensuring every last grain from your field gets into your tank. Plus, XPR concaves work for all row crops. No more changing concaves, meaning you have less downtime. Take back your bushels this harvest. Get Estes Performance Concaves in your combine today.
Invisible, invasive, underestimated. Nematodes are stealing over 10% of yields, and current protection methods aren't enough. But a breakthrough seed treatment technology controls nematodes when they attack. Now offering NemaStrike technology. It provides broad spectrum control from the start and stays in the root zone as plants grow. Take back your bushels with NemaStrike technology. Strike where nematodes attack.
Out here, great yield starts with great weed control. That's why I choose the Roundup Ready Extend crop system, the system that makes the difference, because only I know what it takes out here. Yield's what it's all for. But keeping my fields clean all season, that's what it's all about. This is my field.
Take a look inside any rotary combine, and you'll find single rotor technology. Technology Case IH introduced over 35 years ago with the axial flow combine. But unless it gives you more bells and whistles with fewer belts and chains, more power using less fuel, it's not an axial flow. Because while the heart of every rotary combine beats red, only Case IH gives you the power to do more.
One of the biggest improvements that we've seen in weed control programs around the country in recent years has been the addition of post-emerge residual herbicides to try to hold that weed pressure down further into the season.
All right, you don't necessarily have to do this. If you have low weed pressure, if you're in the extreme northern part of the United States and you have a short growing season, if you used 3 pre-emerge herbicides, I mean, there are many things I can think of where I go, you know, I don't want to invest the money in this. But if, let's say, I've had a lot of issues, especially with resistant weeds, this is absolutely a good program that you can do.
Now, there are many products that can be used post-emerge in soybeans that add some residual to the program. And when we talk about our 3 pre-program, that's why we're discouraging you from using the Group 15s. Now, Group 15s are getting used widely. We're talking about products like Warrant, Outlook, Metolachlor products like Dual. They're great to add to one of your post-emerge applications where you've got something in there that burns down the weeds that are up. These products don't do that, but they are going to land on the soil, and with some moisture, they're going to move into the soil and they're going to catch new weed flushes as they start germinating and wipe them out.
The reason why Darren said we don't want you to use it pre is we do want you to use it early post as part of this program for post-emerge residual herbicides in soybeans. Now, you can use it pre and post. It's just if you're also using it in corn last year and next year, well, now you're going to use it twice this year. It's probably not the best way to manage your weeds and weed resistance. Anyway, what I would encourage you to do if you want to use this early post residual program we're talking about in soybeans is also consider adding something like FlexStar or Cadet to your Group 15. So we really like those Group 15s, but they're just residual herbicides. Cadet and FlexStar have contact activity and they have residual. So if you've got the combination of one of those PPOs, FlexStar or Cadet, plus a Group 15, boy, you've really got something there.
Now, the way I like to do this, Brian, is with the very first pass through the field post-emerge. So you may not even have a whole lot of weeds up yet. If you can get that residual herbicide out there in time where you're going to catch some rain and catch some more weeds that are germinating, that's the best. Now, if you get it out there too late in the summer and maybe you hit a dry spell, it's going to lay there. You're not going to lose it necessarily. The problem is you are going to need some moisture to get that in. Your odds of getting that moisture are better if you do it earlier in the season.
There are certainly other herbicides that can be used. I think right off the top of my head about the ALS herbicides like Pursuit, that has residual. First Rate is another one, ALS herbicide, that has residual. But the problem is those products aren't real great on the resistant weeds, the Roundup resistant weeds that we're usually after, including mare's tail, kochia, lamb's quarters, ragweed, and water hemp and Palmer pigweed.
Now, when it comes to adding cost, here's another thing that growers are rightly concerned about this year. I just can't add a whole lot of cost to my soybean program. It's going to be tough to make money on beans. We're not talking about a lot of money here. In a lot of cases, we're talking $3 to $7, depending on what you're putting out there. There are a lot of generic alternatives as well, which has kind of helped keep the price down, even on some of the name brand products. Plus, there are a lot of rebate programs this year. So if you're using a complete program throughout the season, talk to your retailers about, hey, what tie-in programs are there to help me get these residuals for a lower price?
All right, one last thing I'll bring up for 2 more residual herbicides that we haven't mentioned so far, dicamba and 2,4-D. If you have tolerant crops to either dicamba or 2,4-D, you can get roughly a week's worth of residual out of those. So yes, it's not great, but it is certainly more than what Roundup or Liberty will give you.
There are quite a few post-emerge products that can provide some residual control for your weeds until that crop gets fully canopied. That's what we're suggesting today. Add that to your first pass post-emerge this year in your soybeans. It may just help you on our Weed of the Week. We'll show you how to stop this weed coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is brought to you by Corteva Agriscience, Agriculture Division of Dow DuPont. Finish the fight against tough weeds with the Enlist Weed Control System.
Weeds are tough, but we're tougher. With unrivaled weed control, reduced drift, and near zero volatility. So, who's tough now?
Our Weed of the Week is a simple perennial weed. It's dandelion.
All right, so we see it in a couple different places. First of all, in reduced tillage operations, this is becoming a big issue and it has to be dealt with early this spring. The other place is yards, Brian. We see a lot of dandelions in yards, and wow, they're not the easiest situations.
All right, but let's start with the fields. Honestly, I don't care as much about looks, which is really what dandelions in the yard are. I care about money. So when we've got dandelions out in the field, they're hurting our dollars and cents on the farm. The best way to control them is get it done early. With this simple perennial weed, it's usually strong early in the spring. 2,4-D, dicamba, Roundup, they're all pretty effective at controlling dandelions out in
If
fields.
you have warm weather, that's the challenge in the early spring is sometimes guys are too excited about, wow, it's 50 degrees out, I got to get out there, the field's dry. No, you want to wait till it warms up just a little bit for any of those products to work 100%.
All right, so post-emerge in corn, I really like Status. That's got a little bit of dicamba in there, but the diflufenzapyr is the main killer. In soybeans, if it's Roundup ready, then I'm using Roundup. Otherwise, certainly 2,4-D or dicamba in those tolerant crops. In wheat, I'm going to start with a good burn down of Sharpen. That's usually going to be enough. Otherwise, post-emerge, I'd probably go Husky if it was me.
All right, now in lawns, this is one thing that's changed. We used to use the amine or ester formulations of 2,4-D in a lot of lawn applications. Now we're using a product called Freelex. So make sure it's labeled for your particular situation, but it's a new formulation of 2,4-D called 2,4-D choline that doesn't have the volatility issues that the old amines and esters had.
Well, once again, dandelion is a perennial weed, but it's not quite as difficult to control as many of the other perennials. Again, 2,4-D, dicamba, Roundup, where you can use those products, they are excellent on dandelion.
That's all the time we have for this week's Weed, but Iron Talk is coming up next.
In 1949, Morton Buildings constructed our first machine storage building to establish our bond with the farming community. Since then, our relationship has grown, and so have our product offerings. From the smallest specialized operation to the largest agricultural enterprise, we understand the needs of your business and continue to evolve to meet industry demands. Plus, when you build a Morton building, you're backed by the strongest warranty in the business. To learn more about the Morton Advantage, visit mortonbuildings.com.
There are a lot of steps to having a perfect season. Don't let your fertilizer plan be the step that trips you up. No matter when you apply fertilizer, no matter how, AgroLiquid has the experts and the products that'll help you move closer to your target and hit the bullseye. AgroLiquid moves you closer to your target.
Your planter is the single most important piece of equipment on your farm, because without a uniform stand, you can't reach maximum yield. That's why Harvest International set out to design a planter that takes advantage of the newest innovations in planter technology. Built tough for high speed and integrated with the latest precision enhancements, Harvest International planters ensure every seed you plant today puts more in your bin at harvest. Harvest International, planting the future.
Tough, precise, efficient. Strip tillage with the Soil Warrior brings the future to your farm. Learn more at soilwarrior.com/agphd.
Invisible, invasive, underestimated. Nematodes are stealing over 10% of yields, and current protection methods aren't enough. But a breakthrough seed treatment technology controls nematodes when they attack. Now offering NemaStrike technology. It provides broad spectrum control from the start and stays in the root zone as plants grow. Take back your bushels with NemaStrike technology. Strike where nematodes attack.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
There are 6,272,640 square inches in an acre. We counted. Why? Because we designed the TigerMate 255 field cultivator and 2000 series early riser planter to maximize every single one. So when you create the most level seed bed in the industry and target a nickel size area to plant a seed and never miss, you'll know in high efficiency farming, there's one name to count on. Case IH. Rethink productivity. Learn more at caseih.com/everyinch.
Will my spray work differently in the morning versus afternoon versus the evening? The answer is that it can and often does. We'll explain how to manage that in today's Iron Talk. On our farm, we're looking for a day that isn't windy, has no chance of rain, it's sunny, warm, has all the crops and weeds growing actively, and it falls in the middle of the week if possible. How many of those days do you get on your farm each season? If we get 2 or 3 of them each month, we would be lucky. We're searching for a few hours here or there that we can knock out some acres until the next couple of hours of suitable weather. On our operation, and likely yours as well, we've been spraying many of the acres either in the early mornings or later into the evenings to avoid wind. This also helps us avoid the excessive heat in the middle of summer days. There are a few challenges to watch out for, though. Today, let's focus on moisture. Moisture is critical, and I'm not just speaking about the chance of rain. You also have to look at dew. If the plants are covered with dew in the morning, you need to wait to spray until the dew is burned off. Otherwise, adding more water droplets to those already wet leaves will just cause the moisture to run off, or if not, your spray solution will be diluted that much more. The other thing, especially in the evenings, is that spraying too late in the day may cause the spray droplets not to dry on the leaf, effectively making your rainfast times much longer. In other words, if your product is safe from rain if it's sprayed on 2 hours before a rain, but you spray it at 8 p.m. and the humidity comes up, perhaps dew sets in, whatever the case, you may now have extended your time before the product is safe from rain until 10 a.m. the next morning. In fact, we're seeing some pesticide labels restrict the time of day that products such as dicamba are applied. So check the forecast before spraying and be aware of any moisture that may impact your spray. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
Well, that's our time for today, but before we go, I just wanted to remind you about the Ag PhD Field Day that's coming up this summer. It's always the last Thursday in July. This year it is Thursday, July 25th. We would love to host you on our farm. It's a free event. You can find out more at agphd.com.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.